Welcome to the Greater Central Florida Multifamily Investor Group, where we focus on investing where it makes sense. Here's your host, Ismael Ray Reyes.
First and foremost, thanks for everyone joining me here. This is the Greater Central Multifamily Investment Group meeting, and we focus on investing here where it makes the most sense, right? Whether it's Central Florida or whether we partner here and invest elsewhere. Our main goal is to learn from each other, help each other, which we do. I've got several partners on this call right now, and I'm always looking for potential partners and deals. So this is always good to have an opportunity to get together with like-minded individuals that are looking to build generational wealth. So what I wanted to do today, as we get a couple more folks in, I want to just take a minute because I did have something that pop up on Florida that I want to just talk about real quick. And I'm just going to post something on the screen here. Nothing fancy, but I did want to talk a little bit about this because I think we're seeing a lot of this. Can everyone see this this article that I have up?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, talking about Florida in general, right? I mean, Amazon is everywhere, but I think a lot of people, they talk about Amazon and they think that there's an argument that either Amazon helps the economy or it hinders the economy because it sort of, certain jobs get pushed away because Amazon just sort of takes everything up. My argument is that I think Amazon, like any other savvy group, is going to look to invest in real estate where it makes the most sense for them to do so. And so they normally look for high avenues of approach. They'll look for main highways and areas where there may be some advantages for logistics. And so when you talk Florida here, let's just take a look at what they've done. I think this is another 8,000 jobs that they're looking at between now and 2022. They just announced recently another 2,000 jobs in Tallahassee. Actually, it was about 1,000 in Tallahassee and another 1,000 spread out throughout the state. I know Port St. Lucie, which is kind of in our area. It's a little bit south of Central Florida, but even Port St. Lucie is getting a fulfillment center there. And so Port St. Lucie right off of I-95, you have Tallahassee right off of I-10. Essentially, Amazon's putting these locations where, one, they're getting favorable terms from the local and even state governments, primarily by way of tax incentives. But more importantly, they're putting it where it makes the most sense for them to stage the logistics. And we know about Amazon, what we know is they like to use that. They have certain logistics sort of elements that go that stretch out, and everything sort of goes to a regional fulfillment center. And from there, it goes to these local distribution areas. And that's how we get our stuff, within a day or two, because everything is being staged along the way. So Tallahassee, Florida, a lot of demographic growth all across the state. And so that means there's additional requirements for Amazon to build in these areas because they need to stage equipment. And so they need to stage equipment and supplies and the actual merchandise. So I just use that as a point, as you guys are actually looking at assets. Take a look at what Amazon's doing in that area. We're investing right now. We have a property under contract in Tallahassee. It's not by accident. Amazon is going there on purpose with us here. And Scott, I just want to introduce you here to the group. And I know you've got a presentation. I've given you share rights. So as soon as I intro you, man, you're cleared hot, man, to give us all that good information. And for those of you that are thinking about this, I always bring people on the show that I work with, and I work with Scott. I've worked with them before on single family when I was focusing on single family, and now that we're on the multifamily side, I'm starting to work with him, and that's kind of be the focus of this discussion is, yes, single family, but also how do we as multifamily investors and syndicators, how can we capitalize on this asset protection, and also this idea that you can create one LLC and create multiple LLCs underneath that quickly and able to transition from one group to one child LLC to another. So I won't steal your thunder. So let me just go ahead and do a quick intro here. I know Scott, and feel free once you get on, if you want to add some more, that's good as well. But Scott Royal Smith is a real estate investor and asset protection attorney. Scott became an entrepreneur while still in law school, purchasing and running an auto mechanic shop to pay his way through school. After graduating, Scott began his law career as a high-stakes corporate litigator. He spent the last 10 years of his career analyzing real estate investment and asset protection. Today, Scott is the founder and CEO of Royal Legal Solutions, a firm he built to offer tax, business, and legal strategies to clients all over the US and Canada. He continues to educate the public on asset protection strategies to help circumvent debilitating lawsuits for his clients. And we are a litigious society, so that's always a good thing. All right, Scott, take it over, man.
Thanks, Ray. I just want to first of all say thank you to everybody for having me with your group today. Thanks for being a part of what you guys are going on. I think it's great. And one of the keys to success that we teach on Royal Legal Solutions is you have to have like a good guru, somebody you're going to follow, somebody who's walked the path before that you've done, and also good comrades, right? Like who are the people that are in the trenches that are having the same issues with you that you can talk to, about it. And so that's what like this group is really brings together as a great focus and a great force of having the right people into it. So just want to commend you first on actually just showing up, because showing up is such a big part of what does success look like. So just briefly about me, guys, so you can have a feel for like what my journey was through real estate investing. I got my first property. I bought a transmission and auto repair shop in a commercial building when I was in law school, before the back taxes, and then ran that shop for 2 years and then flipped the building. So me and my partner were able to graduate from law school without any debt through real estate investing. And that's kind of where I fell in love with it, because I was like, holy smokes, like this is cooler than anything that's going on in law. So I might have lived like the same journey you guys in a lot of ways, because I worked for 2 years suing insurance companies. Turns out that insurance companies are great at collecting premiums, but their business model is built on denying coverage, right? That's how that business works, in case anybody was wondering. And then lawyers like me step in whenever they do it inappropriately, right? Which is usually on any expensive claims, right, that come through. That's where you find an attorney such as myself that would go in and get justice, so to speak. And I did that for 2 years, and the whole time I still was doing real estate investing. And at the end of 2 years, I was actually making more money doing real estate investing than I was being an attorney. But it's great. I needed the income for being an attorney at that time to be able to fund my real estate habit. And within 7 years, I had accomplished my financial freedom, which is my passive income equaling my expenses. And I was out of the game totally. I was like ready to retire. And I was like, this is awesome. I hit retirement way faster than anybody else I know. Look how great I am. And then ran into a problem, which was I don't have anything to do. Like I ran out of stuff that made important for me to do at that point. And that's when I learned that I had to take like another level up. So for me, it was financial freedom, and then great, how can I actually go help other people? And what way am I going to go do that? And what that meant for me was actually just going to real estate meetup groups and starting to teach people, if here's what I did, like actually with my real estate investing itself to scale quickly with it. But then everybody found out I was an attorney, and then all of a sudden the conversations turned to, well, what are you doing for your asset protection, your estate planning, your tax, Scott? Like, well, how does all the other background stuff work? Since you're an attorney and we really focused on taxes, then what did you do, right? So I started telling people what I did, and they were asking me if I could set it up for them. So I said, sure, happy to do that. I was really small time at that point, and then I went into people say go do podcasting, and so I went on to a couple of podcasts, and all of a sudden I made the mistake of giving everybody my personal cell phone and personal phone number, and then my phone was just like exploding all the time. I had nothing set up to help any of these people. I thought like maybe 2 people would call, right? I was like, maybe 2 people, maybe somebody's grandma, who's just bored will probably hear this podcast and call me or something like that. And maybe I can help her, right? With trying to figure out why her Walmart.com order is wrong and wondering if we could sue him for it or something. I don't know. But it turned out that there's turned to be so many people that needed help with their asset protection, estate planning, tax, that I had to found a company and start helping people with it, right? Because quickly what I realized for my life that was what was rich and fulfilling for me was like helping other people. And then it really became apparent to me pretty quickly that the biggest impact I could the way I could make the biggest impact in the world is going to be how many people can I help get to financial freedom through distilling what are all the best practices, not just on the investing side, but all of the other infrastructure pieces that have to plug into it to help you get to that level of real financial freedom, really building durable wealth, and doing it in the right way and proven methods with it. With the idea being that like the more people that I could get free, then all of a sudden I should see impacts in the world, because people that aren't underneath financial pressure now have the energy to go get back to their families, their communities, and to the things that make the world a better place. Because I think that's what we do whenever we're not underneath all of this pressure. So, now there's Royal Legal Solutions. And over the last years, we've scaled now to about 2,000 clients working in all 50 states and every type of asset class. And we're an education-based company, meaning we believe in giving away all the information about everything we do to anybody that wants it 100% for free. Like, so much to the extent that people were like, hey, you're giving away all of the secrets of how to do it. I said, fantastic. All the secrets should be out there. Our job should merely be helping people build, not holding back information. That's the way this game should work. That's a fair and even playing field for us to be able to do business and to grow together. And so this is the start of Royal Legal Solutions. And then today what I'm going to be showing everybody is our most popular asset protection, estate planning, and tax saving system, fully integrated for people that are in the 1 to 4 unit space, that are principally in the 1 to 4 unit space, that have 1 to 4 unit properties into it, right? So we're talking, when I refer to single family homes, that's what I'm talking about. Single in our industry, that's anything that's 1 to 4 units. It's all treated the same. Great. At this point, how is everybody feeling? Like this is what we came here to talk about today? Everybody's feeling in line of like this is what we wanted? Okay, cool. All right, great. If anybody's feeling differently about that, like pop it into the chat and we'll figure out what was the piece that went along. But I just want to make sure that we're all in the same boat, rolling in the same direction. Sounds like we are. So great. I'm going to go ahead and start presenting then into the slideshow. Great. So what you should see here is this is our peace of mind system for single family home investors. We currently protect about $2 billion in assets in all 50 states. This is me. I'm Scott Royal Smith, attorney, a litigator, and real estate investor. And my company is Royal Legal Solutions. We have about 30 member staff of attorneys, paralegals, and other administrative staff. We have 4 attorneys on staff currently, as well as a full-time CPA who works with our tax division. This is what we call our peace of mind temple. Peace of mind temple is about how do we approach what really gives you true peace of mind. And this is the way that we look at it, that you need to build out all of the assets of this temple to really hit all the major goals that we have here in life. The first thing, of course, being how do we create wealth? We need income coming in. The next thing we do is got to fight to keep that money from the government, which is why you have tax strategies that come into place. The government's the first thief in the terms of who takes from you right here. Then you have your 5 pillars of asset protection. This is how you keep other people's hands out of your pockets from litigation and the major things you need to focus on for that. Then the last things we look at is time leverage. How can you get your time back? Now that you have all of your money, it's protected from the government, protected from lawsuits. We need you to get your time back. And then we also need to get you thinking long term. What's the point of your legacy? What legacy are you driving towards? Are you pouring into your family? Are you pouring into community, certain nonprofits? What's going on that makes a difference for you in the world? And then lastly, like this is your personal fulfillment, which is after we build like this temple together, right? That's going to give you back your time. It's going to protect your wealth. It's going to just clean up all of your taxes. And it's going to plan for your legacy. Great. How is that going to enable you to be able to do the next thing, which is you becoming the best version of yourself, right? That's not our job. That's your job. But everything up from legacy planning up, every part of this temple are things that we can build as part of a repeatable and integrated system. So as you guys know, like why real estate and wealth creation? It's because we want passive income, we want leveraged wealth, we want time freedom, and we want long-term security, right? That's the reason all of us are really inside of the real estate game. And the reason I got into asset protection as a main focus for me is because a friend of mine lost $3 million from a frivolous lawsuit. And it's because he was very well insured, but he had all his properties in his personal name, but he was solely relying on insurance. He didn't have any compartmentalization of his assets. They were all just held in his personal name. He didn't have any anonymity. All of it was held in his personal name. So anything that he did in his life eventually was going to come back to a lawsuit, whether it was a car accident that exceeded the car limits of his car insurance policy, whether it was because of a business deal that I was doing from a contract that somebody claimed they didn't fulfill, whether it was from an email that he said that somebody had defrauded him. Something would have derailed him to make him at this place. Eventually, it ended up being a contract that ended up going sideways. And lastly, the other thing that we see that where people go wrong, besides the personal exposure to the lawsuits, they can have too many LLCs. It gets too complex. It's too complex to manage and keep up with, right? And when things become too complex, you just don't do them. And in the legal world, if you don't dot all the I's and cross the T's, it just doesn't work. If you do, it gives you amazing benefits in terms of like protection and tax advantages, right? But the problem is that without expert guidance along the way and an expert setup, it can become too complex for people to manage. And then that's when they'll think they're protected, but they're really not. One thing I learned along the way is that wealthy people don't own things and they don't pay taxes. And what I recommend is that we all start to think like wealthy people. If we're not all the way there yet, great. But we can take steps that are in the right direction to get there, planning for the end in mind. Another thing I learned along the way is that lawsuits don't care about right and wrong. Honest people get sued every day. And in fact, when somebody wants to sue you, what they do is they lie. Every single time. There's no such thing as honest people in lawsuits. It's the absolute extreme version of the facts on both sides. And that's just the way the system is set up. So if you're thinking like, oh, I'm honest, so bad things won't happen to me, I gotta tell you, I represented a lot of honest people. Another thing that was critical to my understanding as an asset protection as related to real estate is that lawsuits were a business. There's a question at the beginning of every lawsuit is, should we sue? And the formula is, well, how much can we sue them for? And what's the probability we're going to collect? So how much can we sue them for? In this country is unlimited. You can sue anybody for an unlimited amount of money. Now, so we can't do anything about that. But what can we do? We can influence the part of the equation that has to do with their probability of collecting through asset protection means. So even if they want to sue us for a ton of money, if it doesn't look like they can get to the money, or that it looks like we qualify for food stamps whenever they research how much assets we own, guess what happens with a lawsuit? Doesn't get filed. How would you know to do that? Well, you have to understand that lawsuits are a business and how the decision making works before somebody files a lawsuit. And if you understand that, then you'll understand all the other parts of the game. The next thing we look at is determining, are you at risk? Right? So as I was telling you before, it's determining what's the probability of collecting. So if you looked at it, this is what you would have seen as a sample of something you might have seen of my friend. Where would he have like his owner's name here on these reports from Data Tree? I can get these in under 45 seconds. Is to be able to pull up all the properties associated with your name if you own property in your personal name. And it tells me what the value range of the property is going to be. It has your name on it. It has what the lien value is, the amount that's probably paid off, the probable appreciation. Very quickly, I can search for everything that you own in the country, organize it, and make some quick calculations to be able to tell me, great, it looks like there's $1 million in equity here that we can go after. Let's go ahead and just file the claim, because we're going to put over $1 million of his assets at risk. And then we'll see, and then we'll use that as a lever to extort the other party out of money by saying, hey, if you don't pay us, you're going to risk losing everything. And in fact, we already know where everything's at, and we know you can't hide it because it's real estate. So you can't just move it offshore. There's nothing you can do with it at this point. So this is how we prevent the lawsuits, guys. This is it. This is the end goal of what we're looking at is a system that's like this. It either is this or like this. So there's two major systems that we use for everybody that's located out of California. One is called a hub and spoke model, which is what you see here. You have an LLC hub that's a parent and has individual LLCs underneath it, right? Another system we'll use is called a Series LLC, which works exactly the same way, except the Series LLC is less costly over time and simpler to manage. But this LLC hub and spoke model is the traditional way. If you ever look into asset protection, this is what you're most likely to be able to find. So there's a couple of key aspects here. Remember I told you before about how anonymity was important? Here, did you know that I can file an LLC with the state and I can have it owned by an anonymous trust? So when you look at who owns that LLC, you can't find out who owns it. All you can see that it was created by an attorney and that it's behind a blind trust and that that's available to you as a way of operating or owning assets? I bet you didn't. Did you know that we can use these individual LLCs to compartmentalize our protection? So if there's a lawsuit against this property, property A, that they can't go after anything but property A. They can't go after property what's under property B, C, D, etc. They can't go after your cash and stocks that are held up here in the parent. They're limited in what they can recover to only this. And that's called compartmentalization of the assets. And you might have heard this term, but you might have not seen it in this context, where you can own property inside of a land trust and have that land trust owned by an LLC. So that way you can own the property anonymously. So that way, if somebody looks for your name of what companies do you own, guess what? They can't find what company you own. It's held behind an anonymous trust. Well, what companies does Kevin, what properties does Kevin own, right? Well, I can't find out because everything is held behind an anonymous trust that all ties back to an attorney. And so I can't find out. It looks like when I look on paper, it looks like Kevin doesn't own anything. And guess what? If I decide to sue anyway, guess what? Kevin doesn't own any assets. You can sue Kevin all day long. All of Kevin's assets are inside of this company, right? Well, what if I sue this asset, the owner of the asset itself? Great. Well, you can take Kevin's one asset, but you can't take anything else. And now we've evened the playing field, right? Because remember, the lawsuit was claim size and probability of collecting. When I shrink the pot of gold by compartmentalizing, right, I make it where there's not as much money to get after. When I hide things behind anonymous trust, it makes it look like I don't have much assets. So now I'm not a good target to come sue. And I can't find out what assets you do own. And knowing like how I don't want to prepare for the litigation. Cool. And we're going to be providing this slide deck to everybody, just so you know. So if you're like thinking like, oh my God, these are amazing slides, and I want to dig into all the text that's on these slides, don't worry, you're going to get those. Okay. And at the end of the call today, I'm also going to be sharing with you guys like avenues that you can be able to get access to our other training materials. We have 11 ebooks, 4 hours of videos that really dive into depth on a lot of these topics and even more detail. And I'll be sharing with you all that information with you guys for free too. So just kind of like sit back, relax, and absorb, and just know that like in the next phases of our relationship together, I'm going to be giving you tons more free information that's going to come through. That's really going to help you see everything.
This is awesome, man. Really good stuff so far. Thank you. Awesome.
Thanks, Steven. Great. So let's talk about the 5 pillars of asset protection. You remember this is going to be our peace of mind temple, right? Who we have here. So inside of our peace of mind temple, let's look at all these different pillars. These are our 5 pillars of asset protection. Number 1, we have insurance. Insurance is designed, guys, not to protect you from everything. What it's designed to protect you for is like the nuisance things in your life that happen, right? We want that to be just like the slip and falls on your sidewalks, right? When anything catastrophic happens on your property, like grandma falls to the stairs, or you have like a debilitating issue with somebody has like black mold and some type of health concern like that, those really horrible things, the way that it works is that we shouldn't anticipate insurance protecting us from that. That's where we need the compartmentalization of our assets and protections through LLCs to do that, right? So insurance takes care of the cheap things, but it doesn't take care of the expensive things, right? We should expect the insurance company to deny coverage on anything that gets expensive. Next, we talked about compartmentalization. That's where we said, hey, we're going to create those streams, like one per property. So if anything happens with one property, they can't go after any other properties. And by the way, I don't own anything anymore. My asset holding company owns everything outside of like small amounts of operational cash or things that you need just for like your day-to-day living. Next is separation. And separation, the key focus there is going to be around separating all of the active parts of your business from the asset holding parts of your business. So the company structure I showed you before, what is that? It's an asset holding company. Why? Because it holds assets. It's like really simple and straightforward, just like that, right? What's an operating company? Your operating company doesn't own anything, but it does everything, right? That's the active part of your business. So in real estate, your asset holding company owns all of your houses. Your operating company leases the building to the tenants, for example, and would sign that lease instead of you personally engaging that lease. That'd be one form of separation. By the way, if you own a business, every business should be operating the same thing. Your business shouldn't own assets, especially not its website and other things that interact with customers. Number 4 is here's your liability. So this is like looking at your risk exposure, and how are you actually operating your business on like a day-to-day, right? So this is like, are you operating as a real estate investor under best practices? So like an example of like what best practices wouldn't be is if you just started leasing your building to tenants without a leasing contract. You're like, just move in and Venmo me the money at the end of the month. Like that's increasing your liability. You're not using the law to your advantage to be able to decrease your liability. And lastly, here we look at anonymity. So in anonymity, anonymity is really important. It's our first line of defense. It's how we stop lawsuits before they start, because we want to make it look like on paper that you qualify for food stamps. And if you ever need to prove your ownership of the asset, to either sell the asset, get financing or whatnot, you're able to make private disclosures of the trust documents and other documentation that are limited just to the person you're making to, and such that it doesn't become public. So you can still have your public anonymity to stop lawsuits from happening, but you can still do the private disclosures that you need to operate exactly the same way that you do right now. Cool. So let's look at insurance. Insurance is a business. The goal is to collect premiums and deny coverage, right? This is going to be it's the most basic coverage. It's your minimum coverage that you need, right? So if you could only do one thing, right, it would be like have insurance on it, because insurance protects you against most things most of the time. It's just not sufficient to protect you 100%. It's just most things most of the time. Next is we look in pillar number 2, we look at using a Series LLC, which is our most popular asset protection tool. And what we're looking for that one is isolation, right? Isolation or compartmentalization. When we're looking at that, what we're doing is we're separating out each asset, right? So all of our soft assets that like bank accounts, stocks, etc., that can all be held inside of the parent that we talked about. And any hard assets like boats, cars, real estate, all of those get pushed down into the individual child series or the subsidiary LLCs and whatever model that you're using. Why is it okay to store all of your soft assets in the parent, like cash and stocks? Well, it's because cash and stocks don't do anything, right? Like people can't get hurt in your bank account. People can get hurt on your piece of property. If somebody can get hurt there, then that means that there's liability attached to it. Cash and stocks don't have individual liability. Hard assets do. So we have to compartmentalize every hard asset because we don't know which one of those is going to be a landmine, right? That we're going to step on, or that's going to get stepped on and somehow hurt us. Cool. When we look at the Series LLC, why I like it as our preferred structure is because it's infinitely scalable for free. You can create one parent, which is one cost, and then you can create an infinite number of child series, and there's no additional filing fees or maintenance costs associated with that. So you get all of the protection of having of all of these LLCs, but with none of the cost and none of the hard work that goes into maintaining that many LLCs. Next, you get like one bank account and one set of accounting records and one entity to form and maintain. So it's just like having a single LLC for all of the complexity purposes, but for all of the protection purposes, you get all of that as an add-on and you don't have to pay anything for it. So with the Series LLC, this is our basic Series LLC system. We create a parent Series LLC that's owned by an anonymous trust, so that way we can own this company anonymously. Then we're able to create individual child series and land trusts, one per property here. So property A is owned by land trust A is owned by child series A is owned by the parent. We keep one set of accounting books, one bank account, and it's one tax filing in the same way that your tax filings occur right now. So if that's you individually, that's great. If it's you and a spouse filing jointly or separately, whatever the case may be, all of that will stay exactly the same because this entity structure will be treated like a disregarded entity for IRS purposes. So there's no additional complexity or additional CPA filings that you have to do. And all you have to do is tag the income and expenses of each individual child series in your accounting records, which really means just keep track of what income and expense belongs to each property, right? We can do everything through one bank account and everything in the system works and it gives you all the protection. You just need to do the basic accounting, right? Which literally takes you under a half an hour to be able to do as a month-to-month type of process. And with this asset protection structure, it's the last structure you should ever need to grow as big as you want to grow. So this structure will scale with you as big as you get throughout your life as a real estate investor.
Scott, I know this is geared towards smaller multifamily, as in the 1 to 4 units, and a single family, of course. But there really is no difference if you're in the syndication business. If essentially each syndication that you're investing in is a child in your series, what exactly would be the difference? Is there anything else?
None. No, each of the child series will act just like an LLC for syndication purposes, partnership purposes, etc. Right? For the things I'm talking about now is just talking about like, hey, what does personal asset protection look like, right? Okay. And then you could do all of your syndications like through these assets, right? There's also more complicated things you can do. They could say like, well, I'm having a mix between some apartment complexes and some commercial buildings and some individual 1 to 4 unit. And like, great, well, we might need to layer in some individual LLCs that are owned by the parent series LLC because of financing concerns or whatever it would be, right? But this is the basic structure if you have any 1 to 4 unit into it. And then there's all of the additional complexities that we can plug in if you have a more complex situation, and that we're skilled at how to do that. And that's one of the reasons that I think that a lot of people partner with us, is because we work with so many investors that have had so many different routes. And it's like, okay, cool. We've done a ton of these already by the time anybody's coming through the door. Did that answer your question, Ray?
It does. It does. And in my mind, that's obviously my focus. And we have a mix here between people looking at multi and single, and a lot of us have both. So it's good. Yeah.
So I'll be happy to do some Q&A here too, and talk through like particular situations that people might have, so we can get through some of the complexity. There are a lot of people that come to us are like, hey, I know I've been doing this for years, but I just never pulled the trigger onto it. But it looks like you guys know the complexities of what I got going on. It's because I'm a real estate investor myself, right? So like I had to do all of this on my own. So when I'm doing it for you, it's like, no, I had to figure it out on my own too, because I've gotten into everything. I'm a dabbler. I don't know if you guys are, but I've gotten into just about everything over the years. So let's just talk about buying property real quick. A lot of people are wondering like, well, how would I acquire the asset? And what I always tell people is like, you acquire the asset in whatever way the financing institution tells you need to do it, right? So if it's like your 1 to 4 units and your first 10 conforming loans, that's almost always going to be just buying the asset in your personal name, so you can get that conforming loan money, right? That cheap money. And then you transfer it into the land trust using a warranty deed, so you preserve the title insurance. And because it's transferred to a land trust, you don't have to worry about the due on sale clause per the St. Germain Act. And some people are like, well, how do I know for sure I can rely on that? So, well, then just keep paying the note. Nobody forecloses on a note that is a performing note. That's not the way that business works, right? So as long as you're performing on the note, you shouldn't have any problems. It's like, well, what if they still have a problem with it? So, well, then your absolute worst case scenario is that you have to deed the property back to how you had it before. You've cured the breach of contract per the note, and therefore you'll stop the foreclosure proceeding. So my advice is to be aggressive, right? Is to be aggressive on like the financing front to make sure you always get the best money, and be aggressive in moving the assets into your protected structure with it. I generally think like being more aggressive in this particular area is a place where a lot of people have additional complexity that they don't necessarily need with it. So in any event, this is how you would this is how you do it. We structure the asset, the transfer of the asset, so it looks like a sale. So if anybody looks at it, it looks like it's a sale to an anonymous trust, right? Of the asset itself. So your name appears in the chain of title as a previous owner, but the trust looks like they purchased the property. And if they happen to guess and say, well, I think Kevin still owns that piece of property, even though it says it's this trust, well, guess what? Kevin doesn't own the piece of property, right? The trust owns the property, and the trust is owned by a child series of the LLC. So if they guess wrong, and they just wasted $5,000 on a guess because they filed a lawsuit where they don't have any recovery, right? They made a bad bet and going after it. And you know the whole time that all they're going to do is waste money, which is what you like. You like them to waste money, because the more money they waste on stuff that doesn't help them attack the objective, the less money they actually have to fight anything. The less money they have to fight, the more likely they are to give up quick. Great. Yeah, Ray, you're from the military, right? Like, what's the number one thing? It's like, make it more difficult for your enemy and exhaust his resources, right? You extend his timeline and his resources, and you win a battle by like attrition by putting him into a bad position. It's the same thing in litigation. It's no different. Yeah, so when you look to sell a piece of property, right, you have your child series or land trust and your property here. You can either sell the property directly out of the land trust itself, and a lot of times you'll just do like a quick certification of trust document, something to prove to the title company, like right before the sale, hey, this is what's happening. Here's the actual trustees, and we execute that documentation to help you with the sale there. Some of my clients have decided, hey, I don't want to deal with that title company like at all, right, with it. So great. Well, then what you want to do is just transfer the property back to your personal name and then sell it out of your personal name to a third party, because the title company only looks back at like who's the current seller, and they'll just see that's you and say, okay, cool, nothing to look into here. That's Kevin, and here's Kevin across the table from me, and Kevin's on title right now, so we'll sell it. They don't then have to look. They don't look back any further about this prior transfer, so that can make it easier. Also, all 1031 exchanges are going to be available to you on the sales, because remember, this is a disregarded entity for tax purposes, so all of your 1031 plays are still in play with full flexibility and without any constraints. Same kind of thing for financing, right? We just move the property to however we want financing to occur, probably back in your personal name or inside an individual LLC. We refinance it here and then move it back into the trust. The only thing to be cautious of here is a seasoning requirement from some financing institutions, that they want the property held in a particular name for a period of time, up to 6 months in some cases, to do the refinancing, right? So what that means is we just need to be strategic with our planning, right, about what's going to happen. So part of like your quarterly reviews with your asset protection specialist and inside of RLS is that meeting. We go through a 30-minute meeting once a quarter, walk you through, okay, here, are you following best practices? So we go through that conversation and questionnaire to ensure that you're following best practices. And then we look at, great, what are you planning on doing next, right? And so if you attend those quarterly meetings, that's the type of information that you're able to have a accountability partner with, that's an expert to walk you through, great, let's make sure that we're thinking and planning in the right way so we don't lose money. Great. So pillar 3 here is we're talking about separation. This is where you're gonna, like, we call it like it's a shell company or a traditional LLC or an operating company. Basically all it is just a company that does everything but doesn't own anything. We call it like, it's like creating a decoy, right? You want to give them the wrong target to sue because that's who they interacted with, right? So that's generally always who they sue, is whoever they interact with. And that's actually like Kevin through an LLC. So they sue that LLC, but that LLC doesn't own anything. All it's doing is, collecting rents, paying bills, hiring contractors, and performing any of the functions in our lives that have risk associated with them, a legal risk. And what you can do then is just have that LLC owned by an agent trust here. So that way you can actually operate anonymously, right? So some of my clients really like the idea of saying, yeah, I work on XYZ property management company. And when I go to talk to tenants, I'm just there on behalf of the property management company. And then when they're like, blah, blah, blah about whatever, I'm like, hey man, that's not me. That's just policy, right? Like, what's great. Not being the owner gives you a lot of things that people aren't angry at you. There's somebody else out here that nobody ever talks to, that it's, it's them, it's their policies. They like that. They like that level of ability to have a little bit of more of an arm's length kind of relationship with their tenants. And there's a way to do that, to have that LLC, just like we do the Series LLC anonymous and the asset holding company. We can do the same thing on the operating company for you. So a lot of people I talk to, they're wondering about, like, do I need an LLC yet as it comes through? So if you have no assets, you have no credit, business activities, you're not actually improving your credit, you don't need any LLCs. What you need to do is figure out a way to make money probably right now. Once you're looking to do a business, like you have good credit already, looking to build business credit, like to get this LLC to be able to have its own independent credit line separate from your personal credit lines. I'm about to get a $250,000 credit line on an LLC that I've had for 2 years from Chase Bank. And it's fantastic. I mean, it's like really cheap access to capital that I can just scale up and down, and they give it to me because and one of the requirements though is I had to have an LLC and it had to have a 2-year seasoning to that LLC. This LLC can also be used to help you save on taxes if you have looking for your business write-offs or looking for different types of elections, like S corporation elections, for example, are going to help you with doing some write-offs. And you can use it for any of your high-risk activities. So you need one LLC if all you're doing is running an active business. The moment that you start to have assets like cash and stocks, you need a second LLC, because holding any of those assets in your personal name automatically puts them at risk if you're ever sued. Like a car accident that exceeds the limits of liability of your car insurance policy, for example. So you need 2 LLCs. You would need 3 LLCs if you have soft assets and you have at least one hard asset, like a piece of real estate, because you need an operating company, then you need LLC for your soft assets, and then you need a LLC for your hard asset, your one hard asset. Now, that then you have to then increase the number of LLCs you have if you're going to have a parent company and for every new hard asset you have. So you can see how this number really quickly is like, oh my God, I have so many LLCs, and maybe you don't even have that much yet. So you can either do all of these LLCs or you can do a series LLC and one traditional LLC. And that's the route I like to go because it keeps things more simple. So this is where we create this separation between the 2 companies. And here, this is where you can see that both of the company structures align together. So we have one LLC here. That's our operating company. It's completely separate and independent from what we have here, which is our asset holding company, which is our Series LLC with all of the subsidiary child series, land trust, et cetera. And we're reminding ourselves here that this is the company that owns everything. It's our vault of all of our assets. And this is the company that does everything. It collects funds, hires contractors, and enter agreements, and otherwise is your face to the world. When you look at like how the money flows, the money always flows from the asset to the property management company, and the property management company, which is like your traditional LLC, or it could just be like a third-party property management company. That would then flow to your Series LLC or to your Hub LLC, and then the income would get passed over to you, right? So one way or another, the asset flows through your company structure and then ends up in your pocket at the end of the day. So in liability, there's low risk and high risk real estate investors. The low risk real estate investors that we have out there are like land investors, right? Or sometimes note investors. Note investors are slightly higher risk than land because they're dealing with foreclosure proceedings, and that has inherent risk with it. The land, like there's not much that happens on land, right? So a lot of my land guys, I'm like, just get an LLC and just chunk all your land to the LLC, maybe put in some land trusts. That way people can't know what the extent of the assets are to that LLC, and then call it good. You know, these are $10, $15, $20,000 pieces of like one-off land, right? But for high risk is going to be anybody where you have active people in and out of the property. People are inherently risky. They get hurt, they do stupid stuff, right? So that's going to be anybody in the single or family, multifamily home space. We would consider a high risk individual. So we're looking at high risk. We're also looking at like how to protect your liability, right? So how can we make sure that we're conscientious about our exposure at any given time, about where are we holding cash? How are we making sure that we're not piercing the corporate veil or having like inappropriate commingling between things inside of our company structure? How are we making sure that our accounting is done correctly, et cetera?
I have one question
Yeah.
before we get too far. The question is, would passive and active businesses need to each be their own parent LLC since they're taxed differently?
Yeah, so I like to keep them both as like separate parents. Like if we go back, and I know we're just about at time too, aren't we? Yeah, so we might have to just break for some Q&A right now before we get too far into like the tax discussion.
Mhm.
But you see here how this is like your operating LLC. You could have this is an independent LLC. So you could run your active business out of here and then take this out as active income. Have your own EIN number for this and say, great, this is all my active income. I'm going to channel it all through this operating LLC. And then I have all my passive income through this EIN number in this LLC. And that's how I'm going to keep my active and passive separate. You don't want to run an active business with your passive investments because IRS will treat all of the income as active at that point, which is at a higher tax bracket. Well, Maybe this is a good place, Ray, for us to just stop and do some Q&A and like a quick wrap up since we have about 9 minutes left.
Cool. I actually took a note because one of the questions I had was on if we're raising capital, whether it's a fund of funds or whether it's just you're a general partner in a syndication, is that considered? Would you consider that kind of like an active company? Because essentially, if you're raising capital, you at some point a company is going to be part of a GP structure in a syndication, but it won't be the company that essentially not necessarily the one that raised the capital. Would that work that way, or would it be different?
Well, I think a fund, like a company that's making money off of fundraising, would be considered an active income company, right? But the deal is like, what should happen is that like your GP interest in that fund structure should point to one or more people's personal active income, right? Like those shouldn't be mixed. They wouldn't be mixed in some way. Like your ownership interest would then route the income appropriately to the tax event that you want to have happen. Because it's very likely that fund of funds or whatever it's going to be isn't going to have its own tax return. Probably all the profits, and it's going to be expenses, and then all the profits get distributed out, right? So it actually won't have income. All the income is going to be reported through the individuals that are the owners or otherwise have the beneficial interest.
Sweet. Okay.
Did that go everybody's head? we got pretty deep. Maybe everybody caught that. That's a good one though.
There's some folks in here that are doing this stuff, so that's good.
Okay, cool.
Maybe some did, but I think it's good to have.
I was just trying to look at people's eyes as I'm like scanning the room of like who just glazed over and who's like, wow, this is amazing. Okay, cool. Great. Should we take some more questions? Does anybody? How do you typically do this, Ray?
Yeah, some people ask questions as you go, but I mean, if anybody's got a question, it's a good place for sure. And then if there's not any more questions, then we can just continue and then go from there. I could ask some more questions too, but I don't want to take it too deep either, because I definitely have one focus in my head of how I use this, and it isn't necessarily for like I mentioned, straight single family, but I think it's the flexibility of it that I enjoy, because syndications I don't give people a chance to kind of think through a question or two, but syndications do give you some anonymity, because essentially the LLC is what's acquiring that asset, which everybody's kind of investing into in a standard syndication. So you already have some anonymity, but if you use enough, if you have enough of them that you're using the same entity as the GP, then you're tying up potentially your interest in multiple syndications if they can figure out where that's coming from. So they can essentially pierce the veil from the other side, not from the syndication side per se, but from you owning assets and those being syndication assets, if you don't do it correctly. So I think there's still some value regardless whether there is already some protection on the LLC side.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common for our syndication investors. So we typically structure out like an asset holding company. It's like the Series LLC here, and then they would place like they make each of their syndication investments like through a child series into a trust, because they actually want to place their money into that syndication in the form of a trust. Because actually, for a lot of people, when you get into the syndications, you can find out from the legal documentation who are all of the members and that are invested inside of the syndication, right? And they don't want their information to be out there like that. Also, if something really blows up with the deal, right? Like in typical limited partnership structures, are like LLCs are in syndications, you're protected if anything goes wrong in the syndication, right? Like that's the purpose of why they structured inside of the legal entity. So you as an investor don't have to take on the risk of like whatever might happen in there, except when it's something really, really bad. Because when it's really, really bad of whatever happened, like it looked like somebody was trying to defraud somebody or otherwise engage in some type of like illegal behavior, then what will happen is they'll pierce the LLC and hold the limited partners accountable. And in that context, investing through your own asset holding company gives you another level of protection, right? Because the limits of your liability, even in the event that something happens wrong in the syndication, as you as a partner there, you're already protected. You're additionally protected here because you're asset holding a company. And by the way, because you did it with the Series LLC and a trust, it didn't cost you anything extra to have that protection, and it moves the asset directly underneath your parent company, which is your full asset holding company. So it keeps all of your assets nice and tidy. And then additionally, I just wanted to show you real quick here before we break. I only have us budgeted here till 7, Ray, so I might have to come back and finish the rest of this presentation. I didn't realize how the timing of this was going to work. So my apologies on that. But to give you guys a high level look of what this looks like, you can see here how you have your operating company. You would have like your solo 401ks and self-directed IRAs here. This is where you would be able to push money into your own retirement account, your own retirement accounts, and then make real estate investments out of these accounts. If you ever need access to cash out of those, you're able to loan them back to yourself. And you can push up to $57,000, I think, this year into these accounts. So it's a great tax saving tool. You can also have this company taxed as an S corporation, which saves you about 7% off of your effective tax rate. Typically it starts to make sense once you're making over $50,000 a year. By the time you have to pay for the CPA to file that extra tax return, and how much you save on taxes, it's about that $50,000 a year mark is where you need to start looking at S corporations. And this is where you have your asset holding company, which is either your hub and spoke model, which you might be familiar with, like a Wyoming LLC and individual LLCs, one in each state, wherever you're holding assets. Or in our model that we were going over today was a Series LLC. It'd just be one Series LLC, typically formed in the state of Texas, Delaware, Nevada, or Wyoming. And then that would then be owned by an agent trust. And as you can see here, this living trust is part of your estate planning tool. It's channeled here so that way it owns everything underneath it. Everything in your life is ultimately owned by this one living trust, which is how you pass all of the assets on to your heirs. And once you have over $1 million in total net worth, that's where we'll start looking at offshore trusts and other advanced estate planning tools that can happen for generational wealth, as well as, what are the maximum protections you can get and how do you do that into it. So this is the full map of everything that we can go into, either from Series LLCs, estate planning, tax saving options, S corporations, etc. Just to give you guys a flavor of that for working with Ray on what would be most valuable to talk about, and whatever's top of mind for you guys. And really, we have so many resources and so many different really generalized conversations like we've had today, just to introduce you to the concepts and the big why and what does it look like and the complexity here. And so my intention was to come in here and to show you all of that so you can see like, oh my God, there's an amazing breadth of knowledge here that's going to help me make money and save money on my taxes and help me build the foundations for my life, and that that I can help you get into more information so you can make more informed choices before you start pulling the trigger on how much money you want to spend. Unless you're like, great, I know this is what I want to do. Great, we can go ahead and get started. If not, I want to introduce you to those materials. So with all being said, Ray, do you, I'll stop the screen share so you can take back over control of things here.
And while you do that, Scott, one question. So I got somebody who wants to know if they want to, what's your starter package? If you, let's just say, like, and you talked about different models, but if what's one that you would maybe one or two series, one or two entities, a Series LLC or something that you could sort of put out there, or a link where they can find out more info if they want more info on that.
Yeah. So what it costs. So we have options that are as low as $550 to start if you're just looking for some basic anonymity pieces to put in play, and we can scale up with you like over time, right? So it's never too early to start. That's why I was like, hey, at the bare minimum, you should probably have at least one LLC. Start thinking about some anonymity. Maybe that's like $1,500, $2,000, somewhere like in that range of what it's going to cost you for just like the absolute basic. When we start looking into the Series LLCs and layering the estate planning and the tax protection types of vehicles we use and the retirement vehicles for that, you're typically looking in the range of our average client is somewhere between like, 4,000 to I'd say about 8,000, depending upon the complexity of everything that they have going on in there. And some of them are much, much more, right? But we're really geared around the people. We have some clients that have like 40 properties or 200 doors or more, right? But our average client is actually the person that's in that like 0 to 6 property range and trying to grow to that 10 to 15, right? And say, great, We think that these structures of the Series LLCs start to make a ton more sense than LLCs once you get to that second property or third property that you have. So if you're anticipating any type of volume and scale to your life in this area, we have the absolute best solution that's going to save you a ton of time and money on it. In terms of like where to go, it's just going to be to royallegalsolutions.com, and then clicking on get a price at the top of the page is going to be your best bet to be able to do that. I can show everybody how to do that real quick for everybody that's at home. It's just really simple, guys. All you do is you just go to royallegalsolutions.com. You're going to come here to the get a price piece. And then this is where you're come here and then just fill out this quick quiz. And that's going to give us all the information that we need to be able to have a meaningful conversation with you. And if you scroll down here, this is an hour and 45-minute presentation where I dive in depth with here is all of the most jam-packed info. A lot of people will end up watching that video a few times to be able to absorb all of the information that's into it. It's all of the tax strategies I talk about, all of the retirement accounts, all of the entity structure pieces, everything is jam-packed into this video. So this is probably your number one resource that's just accessible by the homepage of the website. All you have to do is royallegalsolutions.com. As I showed you guys before, is you just go here to our homepage and then just click get a price here at the top, and it takes you to that next page and just fill out that quiz. And then once you fill out the quiz, my staff will be in touch with you to help you get paired to the exact right materials. And in the meantime, you'll have that awesome video that will really help you get dive deep in and of itself.
Yeah, when I post, I'm going to obviously it's being recorded, and I'll post it to YouTube, and I'll have some links on there as well. So you want to pop on that. Either way, it will work for sure. Okay. I think
I ask one question, Ray, before Scott leaves? I just one quick question.
Sure, Vinky, go ahead. Good to see you, or at least your name.
Thank you. I'm not sure what's up with my camera. It's not letting me turn it on. But anyways, you were talking about the passive income and also, active income. So if you're a co-GP, there is some active income, and then you might be investing and then getting some passive income. My question is this income is a capital gain, or is it like an income? Can this be portion of this be transferred into your 401k or your self-directed IRA?
So all of your passive income can't be pushed into a solo 401k, right? You have to have active income to be able to do it. So what you want to do is actually take your passive income that's from your asset holding company. And as we talked about before, you channel it through your operating company. That's taxed as an S corporation. Now that it hits the operating company, now it's automatically active income, because they're saying, hey, this is our property management company that's doing all this active business stuff. It's hiring contractors, doing leasing things, like whatever, right? So now you've taken the active income, the passive income, and you've converted it to active income. And then now that it's active income, now you can push it into your solo 401k and then make investments out of your solo 401k. If you want the lower tax rate, then great. Then have it as your passive income, right? And then take it out as your passive income and distribute it through your Series LLC and your asset holding company to you, instead of through your active income through your operating company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does kind of. So when you say that you have the S corps, when you push it up to the S corp, so when you're doing to S corp, isn't that your tax bracket is a little bit higher when you create the S corp versus disengaged entity? You're paying 15% tax more, and then you're saying the parent company has to be S corp.
Are you talking about like a self-employment tax?
Kind of, yeah. You're paying for the self-employment.
Well, what is the 15% tax that you're referring to?
Yeah, because that's what my CPA was saying. He was like, if you set up versus disengage, if you turn it to S corp, you're going to be paying 15% more tax, because you have to pay for your, self-employment or whatever the other things are.
Vinky, I got great news for you. We have CPAs that are way better than yours, right?
Oh, thank you so much.
Because
I appreciate it.
The issue is that the 15% tax that your CPA is referring to is actually a self-employment tax. It doesn't relate to an S corporation. So what you do is you use an S corporation to avoid the 15.3% self-employment tax. And the way you do that is you take the income, you push it into the S corp. Now the S corp now owns all that income, right? Now it's going to pay you out between a mixture between dividend income and employee income. So now you've avoided the self-employment tax, but you've incurred additional Social Security and Medicaid taxes. So those offset to some degree, but the net difference is a 7% tax gain, or a 7% net decrease in your taxes. So if you're at a 20% tax bracket, now you're down at like 13% if you're on your blended tax rate. So if you're making over $50,000 a year, don't take it out as disregarded income and pay self-employment tax. Instead, channel it through your S corporation, pay for that S corporation tax return, but take the income out as the split between the dividend income and employee income. Pay a little bit more in Social Security tax from that, but you're going to enjoy not having to pay that 15.3% self-employment tax through that. They're going to save a bunch of money.
Yeah, great. I think I wanted to circle back with you. I'll ping you offline.
Yeah. I think the best thing to do, Vinky, is just to go to that Royal Legal Solutions page and fill out that quiz after they get a price link. And that's the best way to get into contact with my team.
Definitely. I will do that. Thank you so much for explaining that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to be here to help.
Thanks.
I'll tell you what, that hour went fast, Scott. I don't know where, I know we've gone a little bit past the hour mark here. Anything else that's burning, people? Anything else? Make sure you put your, while we think that one through, put your information on the chat if you haven't, because I will send the the actual presentation from this to those that were on this discussion. So, and then of course the YouTube will have the video, but I won't hang the presentation on YouTube anywhere. So if you want the actual presentation here, then go ahead and just make sure you have your stuff on the chat there. And for those that don't know, if you click on those 3 buttons on the chat, you can actually save the chat so that you keep everybody's information so you don't lose it. So you can save the chat, and then you'll, at the end of it, once we hang up, you've already got, in essence, that thing locked in, and you won't lose it. You can just paste that to a text document. Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one question. Scott, how much different would the structure that you describe apply if it is that it's a non-US citizen?
Oh, no. A non-US citizen only has a different tax implication for whatever your home state CPA is. So if you're fine taking money out, like, and having the money come from, like, we just need to know essentially, what does the money need to look like before it crosses border to you and has that tax implication. So we have like Canadian investors, for example, they need the money to come to them looking like it's coming from a limited partnership. So we bounce, the money goes through all the different entity structures and it ultimately ends up in a limited partnership before it gets distributed to them across the border. So like, great, this wasn't part of a corporation. Absolutely not. It was part of a limited partnership. So it's taxed at a lower rate in Canada versus a corporate. So once you can tell us like, hey, this is what it needs to look like and is best on my end, then great. We just add on that piece to our existing structure to make sure that the money looks right before it gets to you. And that's how we accommodate for whatever that needs to be.
Man, that's fantastic there. That's great info, because I actually have people that work with me that are in Mexico that have some questions of this nature. So I know I can probably push them your way as well. So
yeah, sure.
Okay.
Happy to expand and grow with you guys. Really, really enjoyed my time here. Thank you guys so much. I do have to go, but I want to just everybody, before you go and drop the call off the call today, I highly encourage you to just go right now to that quiz page. Just fill out even the first page of it that has like your name, your email, your phone number into it. That gets you connected with my staff, and then we can start giving you customized and prescriptive of like, here's the information that we found that's most helpful for people that are just like you. So if you just go to that quiz page, just fill out the first page. You don't have to take all the time to fill it all out right now, but if you just fill out the first page, it gets you into those personalized recommendations. And because I know if you're anything like me, I get busy like later on. I need somebody else to hold me accountable to like something that's important enough for me to show up to a webinar here in the evening. And so I know if this is important to you, that's what I'm offering you, is the support from my staff to help hold in the accountability and help make that journey and that education for you as easy as possible with it. And if it makes sense us to grow and partner together, awesome. If it doesn't, that's great too. I'm glad that we were able to at least make a connection over it. So just go to the quiz page and go ahead and fill out that first page before we break.
All right, Scott. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. We'll definitely stay in touch as well, because I got some business that I need to handle with you. So that's coming up quick. So I appreciate your time. It is late for a lot of business stuff here, but this is a hungry group. I mean, that's why we, the folks that want to work 9 to 5, they're the ones that stay in that rat race.
That's right.
Ultimately, that's what happens. They make a lot of money, some of them, but they stay in that rat race no matter what. So folks here are trying to get out.
That's it. Well, happy to help you guys out of it. Thank you so much, Ray, for having me. Have a great night, everyone.